Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to take us to the next session, Digital Transformation, the Core of the New Green Economy. Please join me in welcoming the moderator for the session, Mr. Madhav Narayan, Vice President and Chief Digital Business Officer at DIWA. And the panelists are Mr. Bjoern Ewers, Partner and Managing Director at Boston Consulting Group, Mr. Nevzat Simsek, Industry Director for Energy and Natural Resources at SAP. Last but not least, Mr. Ramez Dandan, Chief Technology Officer at Microsoft Gulf. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I know this is literally the fag end of 3 days of some really hectic activity for many and walking around for others. But this is an interesting discussion topic, something that probably most people are challenged with. The synergy, does it exist between the green economy and the digital economy? But I think if you step back, there are questions on what is this digital economy, what's this green economy all about? So today we have representation from across industry, an elite panel cutting across consulting, software, hardware, cloud. So to share with us their views, to talk pragmatically about the positives and negatives, obviously, to probably leave you with a key takeaway that technology is in a position to create that balance and drive sustainability into the future. So the potential of information communication technology and the challenge of environmental sustainability is what we are going to be talking about today. Technology, as most of you would know, plays a critical role in achieving the long-term balance between human development and natural environment that is essential for sustainability. So the profound changes in technologies and economics of communications marks the transition in the post-industrial economy, in which knowledge and networks play a more important and a preeminent role than capital. And that is what is deemed as digital economy. So it's about primarily knowledge and the networks. The concept of green economy or green growth and green society actually was triggered, as most of you would know, during the global financial crisis between 2008-2009. Green economy is seen as a framework for restoring economic growth while responding to the climate change and other subjects of environmental sustainability. Whatever the approach used for analyzing the environmental impact of technological development, the following aspects are very important to know. At each stage in the evolution of technology, there has been both positive and negative impacts on the economy, society, and the environment, the three pillars of sustainable development. Digitalization is present now in literally every economic sector and every important domain of the society, changing our everyday life, including even business models, the way to think, act in policy and practice. And given the central role of ICT in the economy, the impact of the economic crisis on ICTs is twofold: direct and indirect impacts on the sector itself, but also on the productive and innovative use of ICT across the economy and the society. The digital economy grew more slowly during the crisis, but their future development is considered a very important factor that can help many, many countries. So when we come to integrating the digital economy and the green economy, the opportunities for sustainable development, what are these? Simply put, the green economy can be considered synonymous to a sustainable economy, or what people call as ecological economics, industrial ecology, and environmental resource economics. There are opportunities for creating strategic synergies between digital economy and green economy through strategies like green ICT products and services, smart energy grids, transportation infrastructure, buildings, and production processes in all economic sectors, smart systems for monitoring the environment and managing natural resources, dematerialization of products and services in consumer and business marketplaces and in government and public services, transformation of organizational structures and work practices throughout the economy and society, and finally transformation of values, attitudes, and behavior of individuals as consumers and citizens. This brings us to a point where it is time to introduce the panel sitting next to me, an elite panel, as I said. Joining me from the Boston Consulting Group, the partner and managing director, Bjoern Ewers, based out of Dubai, United Arab Emirates, on my left. And then we have next to Bjoern, Ramez Dandan, the Chief Technology Officer of Microsoft Gulf, based out of Dubai, and representing SAP and the Sales Director for the UAE region is Nevzat. So I would now, without further ado, quickly ask a few relevant questions on the topic, starting off with Bjoern. Bjoern, what do you think are the opportunities for synergy between the digital and green economy?
Yeah, thanks. So looking at the positive side, we do see, and I think many share this, many opportunities, and not just synergies of the green economy with ICT, with the digital economy, but also where the ICT part, the digital side, actually accelerates our initiatives that drive a green economy. And the good news is also this is not far away. This is not 5, 10, 15 years from now, but many examples we do see today in our day-to-day life where, again, this digital economy actually accelerates the green initiatives. Examples are, to be a bit more practical, on the energy side, smart metering that is affecting our lives already day to day. So demand-side management, reducing consumption in our households, depending on the country, 30% reduced of consumption. So they're digital and energy, directly giving a contribution to less energy consumption. The same with water, very critical here in our region in the Middle East. Sensoring control systems that are now attached to pipes without spending any infrastructure or renewing the pipes, reducing the leakage, the physical loss of water in the transmission system by more than 20%. Pilots that have worked here in the region. So again, using digital technology to reduce the burden on our environment and reduce, in this case, consumption of water. Another one is traffic mobility. So digital is obviously impacting our day-to-day mobility, how we move around in this city, Dubai, and other cities. So real-time traffic management, dynamic tolling models, where you actually manage to reduce the time that cars are on the road and therefore reducing pollution, which is again positively impacting sustainability of our environment. Singapore is a good example with them piloting their congestion effort, where they have reduced at the peak times the congestions by close to 50%. Through this real-time management of the traffic. But not just those, maybe last element, if I may, also from the social side. So as we all know, the city we're in, Dubai, is a pioneer in e-government, and that has elements of, as we all know, having less the necessity of us individuals going to authorities, being at the authorities, therefore reducing travel time, but also reducing paper and other physical goods that we need. So it's already there. The good news is there are synergies, there are opportunities, and we see big opportunities of this digital side being an accelerator for the green economy.
Thank you, Bjoern. Ramez, would you want to add anything more to what Bjoern said?
I fully agree. They're synonymous, right? Digital economy and has to be green because technology doesn't exist for its own sake, right? Technology is adopted to solve human issues, human problems. So if you digitize a city or make it smart, but make it more or less power efficient, then you haven't done much, have you? So I don't see them as they have to, they're born to meet, right? And if they don't, then something is wrong, right?
Yeah. Excellent, thank you. Nevzat, a different question. I wanted to know, in what way can digital technology help cities become more resilient to the challenges posed by urbanization?
Yes, thank you, Madhav. So how we can help there as SAP is mainly provide insight into the information available by means of sensors which will be gathered from the cities itself. So let me just give you an example what we are doing with the city of Rio de Janeiro today. Rio de Janeiro is located in an area where annual rain season is happening, and flooding is happening very often there. So what we have done there is we have implemented with the city of Rio de Janeiro a number of sensors in the draining systems. With that, it helps the population of the city to save their lives by taking predictive actions before the rain season even starts, because the sensors are measuring the water level in the drainage system, and city of Rio de Janeiro is able to direct the teams to those locations to secure in advance and to unlock the blockages which is happening. And with the data which is being consolidated over years, so they actually can improve the underlying infrastructure to avoid flooding. So we are using basically the analytics which we get the information fed from the sensors in a way to sustain and make the cities a better place to live and a safer place for their citizens. So we are helping them by transforming, actually using the digital information, by transforming that in an insightful information for the government, for the cities, to help them to be a better place for the people.
Thank you. Ramez, a question for you. We talked about adoption of ICT. So smart adoption of ICT can play an important role in addressing economic, social, and environmental challenges. I think that was something Bjoern alluded to when he spoke about the synergies between the two, digital and the green economy. How can green ICT policies be seamlessly integrated into sustainable development policies?
Green policy. I mean, today policy guides adoption, and in some cases regulates it when it needs to be regulated. So it's important for any policy to be technology aware and objective aware, right? If the objectives of the city, the country, the region are certain carbon footprint goals, for example, or offsetting emissions, or reducing reliance on non-green energy, then those should be built into the policy, and then the technology can be leveraged to execute and implement and measure and correct, the execution against that policy. Now, a lot of the digital economies are built on literally 4 foundations from a technology standpoint. So this is mobility, the apps we use as individuals, as workers, government workers, company workers, and as individuals. Mobility, data and data science. The power of all those sensors are there to generate information, right? And that information requires, it's reams and reams of, we're expecting by 2020 something like 12 zettabytes of data. Actually, we as individuals are sensors, are walking sensors. Every time we use a mobile phone, a smartphone, we're generating a lot of data that's stored in the cloud. So data is very important. Advanced analytics, the use of artificial intelligence tools to look through that data, look for patterns, understand, garner insights that in the naked eye cannot see. When you look at a table, it's a bunch of numbers, but when you employ artificial intelligence tools, which we call now advanced analytics, the amount of insights can be literally endless. And the more data, the more learned the system becomes. And last but not least, which has been a great enabler, especially around the area of creating digital cities and smart cities, the cloud technology. Okay? The cloud technology allows deployments at scale in an agile and cost-efficient way. I'm not going to go into a pitch about the cloud, but these 4 technologies are coming together most of the time under the umbrella of a forward-thinking policy, right? And enabling entities, whether they are public sector, private sector, or a combination of the two, to address and solve real problems like clean air, quieter cities, more efficient transportation, more productivity and competitiveness. So policy is extremely important. It can either discourage or encourage. But at any point in time, if the policy becomes a blocker, and then it's counterproductive.
Thank you. Bjoern, a question for you. Do you have any examples on cities managed to include its inhabitants in the smart and green city initiatives?
So there are some examples in the world, yes, because it's always a challenge, obviously, with all of the policy making top down. Do we really hit the individual and the inhabitants of the city? I think Amsterdam, just looking at part of the panelists that were here before, Amsterdam is one example where they have, through AmSmartDam, where they have attempted with these 3 neighborhoods and 30 quite bottom-up driven initiatives that had smart elements, digital elements, but also had the green sustainability elements, where in these 3 neighborhoods, 30 initiatives, local entrepreneurs were given the opportunity to pilot certain products, certain services, and the population, the engagement of the local population on the ground was extremely high. So there was it started from car sharing, a pool of cars, to other initiatives, and that was one way of letting it start more bottom-up, driven by all of us who live in these cities, probably a smart way before coming again with a more top-down policy to make sure there's engagement and to make sure people live it ultimately. And if I may add one point, because I think Ramez, your point on the big data, on the power of analytics, that fits very well to what Nevzat outlined of Rio de Janeiro. I think ultimately, from a policymaker making point of view, this awareness of the population, what better information and transparency of how people live, how do we behave as people, that is such a big chance for a policymaker, enabled through digital technology, to understand a lot better what's happening, be it the weather, be it traffic, be it day-to-day behavior through our mobile phones, and therefore being more agile and more effective in policy making that leads to a greener economy. So I think, again, from an opportunity perspective, digital can give us a lot also in terms of policy making and adaptation of policy making.
And if I may add one more point to the data issue, being open about that data, meaning governments, we've heard of gov data, open data, these are buzzwords to mean that the data that is generated today from all these sensors, all this telemetry that's going on, if you make it available to a wider audience, the amount of innovation you can get, the amount of benefit you can get is exponentially higher. So a lot of efforts today in forward-thinking countries and cities is around how do you open up that data without being, sacrificing security and privacy. How do you open up that data to all the potential it can hold for companies that small and big outside the immediate government? So it's important to be open as well.
Excellent. I think this brings us to my next question, because we have spoken about connectivity, we have spoken about obviously the cloud, we have spoken about sensorification. So we basically are talking of a situation where there are going to be vulnerabilities. So what kind of vulnerabilities could arise in a world where you have the human, natural systems and materials that are interconnected and hyperlinked in real time? That's one question. And what are the strategies that are needed to anticipate these uncertainties? That's a question for you, Ramez.
Yeah, cybersecurity and privacy, I think, are two sides of the same coin, and the coin being trust, right? How do you trust that your systems are not going to be compromised, your citizens or customers' data won't be compromised? And luckily, a lot of work is being done globally around ensuring those two areas, and we're not there yet. And I don't think we'll ever be there yet. The threats are evolving, and we have to keep up with them. But the policy framework that we see evolve, things like GDPR in Europe, for example, the general protection, data protection regulation, the ISO standards that we see implemented to safeguard this, the edge computing phenomena, making sure that the sensors are not hackable because they're kind of dumb, they're just very simple devices. So edge compute, a lot of effort is being done around the world to ensure the safety and the privacy of the data you're collecting, whether it's at the sensor level, or at the aggregation level, or at the the insights and the analytics level. So that is something that any policy, any strategy should definitely. So things like a data law, like we have now in Dubai, a privacy law that's promised, okay, are very important to guide and guard the implementations that we're talking about. Without them, it's a free-for-all, and you'll have cameras being hijacked, sensors being used for not the intended purposes, and more damaging is people information being divulged without their consent.
Bjoern, any views from your side on this?
Maybe just to add, another very practical challenge is obviously affordability, especially from the public sector perspective, if we think about policy making. And I think there's also a lot of progress that we see globally where policymakers are, again, trying to create new revenue streams or more stable revenue streams to also finance such initiatives, which partially are often also financed still by the public sector. So the Los Angeles example with the smart parking has gone through the world, where we're guided directly by app to the free parking spot, and I think they increased the parking collection fees by 30% based on that. In London, we went from the simple tolling to a real congestion fee, so automated readout of our license plate and then being charged a fee for being in the traffic jam. So I think there's a very practical element, which is on one hand a challenge, but I think it needs to be mastered on how do we afford, also from a public sector perspective, this push towards a more digitalized and also a more greener economy in a city, but also beyond that. That's
and more agile. In many
yes, yeah.
Probably a question that I will throw across to any of you in terms of taking it. A couple of questions rather. One is, recently there have been announcements from the government of Dubai. One was relating to, obviously very recently, on artificial intelligence, forming of a ministry. We spoke about it. Where do you think this is moving? What do you think is the overall drive behind this? Bjoern, we did speak about it while having
so first of all, it speaks again for this city of Dubai and the leadership to identify these elements extremely early, and then to put a dedicated focus to it, to put senior firepower behind it that really gets to the bottom of this and identifies what can be done and what does it mean for the city of Dubai and its inhabitants. So in any of these trends, and Ramez outlined many of them, we think it's really important that we put something behind it, a supportive structure, which is not always a policy, can be other types of resources that drives it forward. And I think Dubai is showing again that it's doing that, which is a very strong start in this case.
Any views on, because there has been always this debate when you bring in technology, obviously it could potentially threaten the need for, in certain functions of an enterprise, the very need for human resources. Jobs, obviously. Any views on that?
It's a whole new topic now.
Yeah. So basically, the reason I'm bringing that is, obviously it is a little different, but then that's a fear that comes into the digital technology that obviously drives sustainability, and I think it has got a social impact, and one of the social impact is obviously job security as well. So
I mean, definitely technology has always impacted job markets and job demographics. I mean, the car impacted the horse industry big time, right? And the train as well. So there's always a price to pay, obviously. We don't know today, with the digital transformation and the onset of artificial intelligence, people are saying we probably will go in a net sum negative, right? But that's a huge topic that probably is not in the context here. But however, okay, we talked about UAE adopting AI, which is natural, by the way. They've adopted business intelligence long time ago. And the trajectory is you go from using data, you go from insights, data that gives you insights about what happened, why it happened, and you can drill down, to foresight, which is, it gives you kind of a view of the future, to eventually automated decision making, right? Where humans don't have to interfere, but that's in the future. So it's natural. At the same time that they've, in the same week almost, when they announced the commitment to artificial intelligence, they also, Sheikh Mohammed announced the 1 million coders.
Coders.
So again, the government understands that you need to retrain, you need to re-equip, retool, right? And in this region, I don't see an issue at all. If we direct our human resources in the right way, okay, with this thought leadership in terms at the helm, at the leadership level, right, and that vision, I'm very optimistic.
Yeah, just to add on your question and on what Ramez is saying, yes, digital transformation impacts the human resource side, obviously, but it doesn't necessarily impact on the number of jobs. It maybe impacts more on the skills required, because where it makes us more efficient one side, it requires different type of profiles, different type of users, and different type of technology users to be coming into the picture. And actually, what I think is we should not be worried about that, because the only constant what is in our life is the change itself. So everything is changing. So I think we should be more focused on improving our lives by using the digital technology rather than seeing as a threat for our jobs or whatsoever. So if we and the commitment that we see in this country and from the leaders of this country is in that direction. So it is in the direction of improving the life of the citizens. And I think Dubai is therefore one of the cities driving that and showing and putting that the technology into the field to improve the people's lives. And we are seeing that daily here.
Excellent, thank you. Taking off from the first statement I made is, I think it's very important in this era that we leverage a lot on knowledge and networking, and that's what the digital world can bring. And even for emerging economies, it's about knowledge and networking, awareness, information that should be available not to only a few, but to the entire population of each of those countries. I would like to, with that, thank you all for patiently listening to us. Hope you were able to get a sense of what are the synergies between digital and green economy. And obviously, the positives are more than the negatives. So I think that's what we would probably leave this discussion with. Thank you, Bjoern. Thank you, Ramez. And thank you, Nevzat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gada. Thank you.